And turning to some breaking news, we have just learned that a formal lab has confirmed the suspicion that that white powdery substance found in the West Wing on Sunday was in fact positive for cocaine. The discovery led to a brief evacuation of the White House Sunday night. Joining us now is NBC White House correspondent Mike Memoli. So, Mike, where do things stand now? This is so unusual. You and I have covered the White House for years. I can't even fathom anything like this having been found before in the West Wing, and I go back to the 70s at the White House. So this is pretty wild.
It's absolutely extraordinary, Andrea. And this new conclusive test confirms what had been the preliminary field test conducted by D.C. fire personnel who were called in on Sunday night after the discovery of this suspicious substance by a uniformed officer in the Secret Service that was conducting a routine patrol of the White House. And so to recap on the developments that we've been reporting on yesterday, this was found, we understand, in a highly trafficked common area of the West Wing. It's an area where individuals, especially visitors, individuals who may be coming for instance, a private tour, might have been asked to leave some of their personal belongings before heading into more sensitive areas of the West Wing, which of course includes the president's, the vice president's office, some of the most senior officials' offices, as well as the press team and a number of deputies. Thank you. Mr. President, what makes you confident
All right, everybody, you can see there that the president was asked many questions, including how cocaine got into the White House, but did not answer.
This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. As fake gets. These stories are only out there because they want them out there. So, of course, the story of Joe Biden and the Biden administration, somebody finding a white powdery substance in the West Wing. And what does it turn out to be? It turns out to be coke. Now, you might say, well, why would they want stories like this out there? Well, they want to continue to push both sides, the left and the right, push them to the brink of insanity and push them to the brink of a national divorce. Now, liberals, of course, are defending this, saying that, oh, it probably was somebody in passing that left it in the West Wing, because apparently people have access to the West Wing and are just bringing drugs in and leaving it there. And of course, the Republicans are saying, well, if this was Donald Trump, he would have been impeached and arrested already, right? Rules for thee, not for me. That whole narrative that they've been pushing over the years. This is obviously all done by design to keep dividing people and to keep making people more and more angry at the opposite political side. The narrative that they've been pushing with Republicans is that laws and rules do not apply to Democrats, right? That's the narrative that the media has been portraying on purpose, right? Otherwise, do you think in a million years that this story would ever get out unless they wanted it to be out? Not to mention the fact of course, there's drugs in the White House. Of course, there's all sorts of really sick activities. All one would have to do is look up the Franklin cover-up. And if you're not familiar with the Franklin cover-up, well, you should become familiar with it. Because it doesn't matter if they're conservative or liberal. All of these fake politicians who play roles in Congress as good people and caring people are sick people. Truly, truly sick people. So this story would never be out there unless they want it to be. MSNBC and the liberal news media wouldn't be covering it unless they were told to cover it. Why would they cover it? They're covering it again because this is going to continue to drive a wedge in our society. It's not just a story that's a distraction. It's a strategically placed story because what's the first thing everyone thinks of, right? Hunter Biden. Well, that story has quietly kind of gotten less and less traction about how Hunter Biden had this laptop from hell, that narrative that we constantly hear about, and how he hasn't been arrested, and oh, the government let him off the hook. Oh, and now mysteriously cocaine is popping up when there's millions of photos out there of Hunter Biden doing drugs, all deliberately out there. They can't create a national divorce without psychologically creating one. Otherwise, people will be like, well, I don't want to lose my neighbor just because he's not the same political affiliation as me. He's my neighbor. He's my friend. Well, it's gotten to the point where they're making people hate one another. And it's all through psychological games that they're playing, where one group of people are untouchable. They could do whatever they want, do as thou wilt. Where another group of people, based on their political affiliation, don't have freedoms, don't have free speech, have the IRS up their rear end, et cetera, et cetera. This isn't being done because the government's going, we need to go after these Republicans only. That's what they want you to think. It's being done because the people in the government are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is create a national divorce, a civil war, which will end in us being split into red and blue states. That's what it turns into. It's not going to turn into anything other than that. And the 2024 election is going to be pivotal. Of course, it's not a real election. It's fake. So whichever way they decide to play it, one side, one way or the other, is going to be extremely upset. Right? If Trump gets back in, liberals are going to say, we're leaving the country, we're never coming back. And if Biden wins, no one's going to believe it. They're going to say this thing's completely rigged, which it is. And they're going to cause people to say, we need to do something about it. We need to break away into two separate countries with separate sets of rules, right? Because again, one of the narratives I've been talking about that's out there is constantly talking about Joe Biden's poll numbers. They constantly talk about it's the lowest in the history of any president. Nobody likes him. Even liberals aren't, giving him positive reviews. And all the other people who would be running against him, like the Gavin Newsoms of the world or Kamala Harris, wouldn't stand a chance ever in a real election. So if one of those people ended up somehow winning, nobody is going to buy it. Of course, the liberals will say, well, it's definitely the real result. But the majority of people would not. And again, we'll see in 2024 what they have planned, but it's all heading towards that. That's why, like I've been talking about with the Supreme Court will not be something that's in place. All of the government structures have to be destroyed. The Senate, the House, everything has to be destroyed for this new world order. So this story is completely hilarious. The fact that they're like, we don't know how it got there. Maybe a civilian came in and just left it behind. Oh, yeah? A civilian came into the White House with a bag of Coke. And we don't have video footage of this? We can't figure out who it is because they said it's likely not going to be solved whose it was. And again, that is to just drive people insane who are conservative, who want to see this bozo the clown here get thrown out of office, which is just part of the show. He's playing his role, and people are reacting to this stuff the way you should react to it, but it's not real. They only put these things in the news if they're real stories. Why would the liberal media even be covering it? Whenever there's a real serious issue, like the magic potion, how come the mainstream media doesn't cover any of the side effects or any of those types of things? Well, because they're told not to cover that, and they're not going to cover that because they still want these suckers to go line up and get it. But stories like this, they will cover, right? Something where it's like just going to drive people crazy who are conservative. It's going to drive people crazy who buy into this whole Hunter Biden and the Biden family not being prosecuted, impeached, etc. Biden's got guns. Biden doesn't pay his taxes, and they slap him on the wrist, whereas a regular citizen in this country would be thrown in jail. Right, those things should naturally bother anyone. But the point of them doing it and making this stuff all public is to divide the people to the point where they will want to break away from current government structure into separate blue and red states. So look at this ridiculous story. And again, of course, there's no, you get sniffed all around at the airport, other places. There's just randomly cocaine is in the White House. I mean, we're really supposed to believe this? So cocaine was found in the West Wing of the White House while President Biden was away, right? So that's another thing with the narrative that the liberal media is like, he wasn't really there though. Oh, so some guy just went in there and did, you know what I mean? Like this whole story is just so ridiculous. The White House was temporarily closed Sunday after Secret Service agents discovered a white powder suspected to be coke inside a work area in the West Wing. And as you saw earlier in the clip that I played in the beginning, that to a T describes what they're doing, right? Joe Biden not answering the question about it. Instead of coming out and saying something, smirking and laughing. That's what they do with every single question that's brought to their attention. And that's done by design because psychologically, this affects people who see this, who are conservative, into saying, look, there's nothing, these people aren't getting away, they're getting away with everything, right? They won't address anything. They won't answer anything. They're so cocky at this point that they're laughing about it. The president's laughing and smirking and making faces suggesting, oh, well, right? What do you think all the stuff with the Trump and the illegal documents thing and Biden with the illegal documents thing is? What's that narrative? Well, the narrative is that, oh, the liberals take documents and they don't get in trouble, but Trump does. That's exactly the narrative they continue to play with story after story after story that comes out. So it's getting people to a point where saying, I don't want to live in a country where these people can get away with murder, these people can get away with doing all these illegal activities, and they're targeting us, they're targeting our guns, they're targeting our free speech, et cetera, et cetera. Done by design, right? And that's a common theme. The most common theme that we're seeing right now in this structure that they're doing as far as psychological operations on the masses is showing one group committing crime after crime after crime and getting away with it. So the other side is going nuts. It's the same thing we saw during the outbreak with the masks, right? We saw Newsom. We see all these guys who are lecturing about the mask. Then they're out at sporting events not wearing them, deliberately taking photographs, of course, pretending that they're just tone deaf when they know exactly what they're doing. They're causing national division. They're causing a divide that is not going to be able to be fixed. And that's what they want, because they want to herd. So all of these psychological operations happen to herd people. And they're herding the left and the right in opposite directions, both fully controlled. Don't think that the red states, it's going to be free, it's going to be great. These guys like Ted Cruz, all these actors that are in there, they're all just baiting people into this. They're doing their job of baiting people in. Lauren Boebert, all these extreme right-wingers, that's what they call them. Marjorie Taylor Greene, all deliberate. And of course, Trump being the face of it. They're doing this on purpose. Both sides are going to be sitting ducks for whatever the regimes decide to do. But these people are working together to do this. Make no mistake about it. The stuff with castrating of children, et cetera, et cetera. They're doing all this stuff to make it to the point where people will not live amongst these other people. Both ways, both sides. So this story is deliberately out there. Again, this ties into the whole narrative that these people are getting away with all these crimes that any other president during any other time period would have been impeached by now, just based on some of the stuff with China, let alone finding drugs in the White House, let alone finding the stuff with Hunter Biden's laptop, et cetera, taking bribes. And then they come out and the Republicans say, we're closer to impeaching, we're closer. And they just keep wheeling people in. And then they'll come out and they'll say, well, we can't impeach him because the DOJ and the FBI are corrupt and they're working with him. So we need to just separate from them. And we need to separate our country into two separate countries, right? But everybody involved will end up being guinea pigs. I mean, the liberals will be the big guinea pigs because they'll be getting experimental shots in them. They'll be getting experimental, living in the smart cities, following the carbon footprint. That'll all be implemented over there, whereas they're going to see much more pushback from conservatives on it. They'll start tricking people into these agendas little by little. They'll be like, well, the climate thing is real, right? Oh, you do need to get your potion. Don't forget who was pushing the potion, the Operation Warp Speed. That was Trump, right? And even up till a few months ago, while he was campaigning, he was like, I'm so proud that we did that. Oh, we shouldn't be criticizing it. We shouldn't be going against it, right? They're still trying to lure people because it's the most important thing they possibly could do is connecting human beings, of course, with technology. So obviously even Trump is in on that, right? When they agree on something, both sides be extremely skeptical, okay? And they don't agree on much ever, but that happened to be one of the things they agreed on. So this story would not be out there. It wouldn't be circulating if they didn't want it to be out there circulating. Again, there's cameras all over the White House, right? I mean, haven't we seen all the camera footage from Capitol Hill? You don't think there's a camera on every single corner to get every single angle possible? But this just goes unnoticed that somebody was in there doing this or having this in the White House. There was no dogs that could smell it and detect it, right? And then the fact that it's even out there. Wouldn't somebody have just found it, maybe thrown it out and been like, oh, don't tell the media? I mean, it's the president of the United States. They obviously control the full-on narrative. So again, that's what you have to remember. None of these stories get out there unless they want them out there. All of these stories have agendas behind it. No matter what, if you go on CNN, there's an agenda behind everything that's out there. Everything. There's the littlest story you might see and be like, oh, this seems like it's not really corrupt, but there is a message behind it. I see it on CNN. They're constantly showing stuff about roller coasters now. The danger of roller coasters, people dying on roller coasters. That's been the theme for the last month. Every day almost there's something up there. Oh, they were stuck upside down on the roller coaster for 8 hours. Oh, did you know this roller coaster had a crack in it? They need to look in it. Well, what is that? You might say, oh, there's no agenda behind that. Oh, no. Why are they talking about that? Roller coasters have accidents all the time. Things go wrong on roller coasters all the time. It's not about people's safety and all that kind of crap. They want people and get people used to shutting down of amusement parks, et cetera, because everything's going to be virtual. Everything. People are going to be in prison in their homes. There's going to be no amusement parks. There's going to be not going anywhere anymore. The climate, the carbon footprint, all this stuff ties into it. So there are messages behind those things. They're not just putting it out there for clicks. Oh, it's like, we're going to get clicks if we talk about a roller coaster that was upside down for 8 hours. It's there for a reason. There's always messaging behind it. Now, you might not agree with what I'm saying about the roller coaster stories, but there is messaging behind it. Because again, everything is going to be in a metaverse, a digital reality. And you'll be able to feel the same effects as a roller coaster in the metaverse, and you don't have to worry about safety because the ride isn't, you're not going to be upside down in the air trusting in some ride that some guy built, right? There's subliminal messaging all over the place. Every single thing is out there for a reason. This story is out there for no other reason other than to continue the civil division, to get people to continue to see this stuff and say, how are they getting away with this? How are they getting away with this? Why are they getting away with this? This isn't fair. Where's the FBI? Where's the DOJ? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Rules for thee, not for me. That's been the narrative for years now that we've seen between the Trump White House turning over to the Biden White House. Ever since Biden's been placed in office, that's what we've seen. That they're targeting conservatives on purpose, by design, not just because they hate us. These people don't like or care about liberals. That's what's funniest about it. These white liberal guys, they trick and dupe a lot of the black voters out there, and they vote Democrat every time. These people care less. They couldn't care less about anyone. They're the biggest racists in the country are liberal white men. For the most part, the biggest, bigots, if you want to use the word, are those people. So in 2024, that's the big thing. That's the big unveiling. Whatever happens in 2024 is going to be the next step leading towards. There'll be tons of fake stories about ballots. They've been building it up over and over and over again to a point where it's going to boil over one way or the other, one side or the other side. And it's leading towards it. And stories like this are the reason why. I thank you all for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always and your families.